Welcome to The Explainer. All right, let's just dive right into it today because we are completely rethinking everyday parenting. You know, we so often think of raising kids as this purely emotional, instinctual journey. But what if I told you it's actually a high-stakes, highly strategic battle of wits? Seriously. Today, we're looking at some genuinely fascinating insights that map the everyday chaos of raising children directly onto the cold, calculated science of game theory. And to kick things off, let's look at a phrase I am absolutely certain we all know. I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. It's the classic parental countdown, right? We've all been there. But here is the secret. Kids see right through it. They are relentless, incredibly cunning negotiators. To give you an idea of just how cunning, get this. There's a famous story from back in 2005. A Japanese executive named Takayoshi Hashiyama was selling a $20 million art collection. He had 2 massive auction houses, Christie's and Sotheby's, competing for the rights to sell it. But he didn't want standard bids. He literally made them play rock, paper, scissors for it. So what did Christie's do? They brilliantly hired consultants. And those consultants were the young twin daughters of an employee. These kids correctly predicted that the opponent would expect a basic opening move and counter it, so they advised playing scissors. And guess what? Christie's won a $20 million deal, all thanks to the strategic minds of little girls. Make no mistake, kids are mapping out our weaknesses before they can even talk.
So here is our game manual for this explainer. 1. The setup. 2. Level 1 fair division. 3. Level 2 auctions. 4. Level 3 threats. 5. Level 4 information. And finally, 6. The boss battle.
Now, the solution to all this daily conflict isn't yelling louder. It's found in Nobel Prize-winning behavioral economics. Game theory is essentially the scientific study of strategic decision-making when there's a conflict of interest. Basically, 2 sides wanting completely different things. Usually, you hear about this stuff in corporate boardrooms or global politics. But today, we are absolutely weaponizing it for the living room.
Level 1. The fair division trap. Resolving the cake conflict.
Okay, picture this. You have a cake, and you have 2 kids. The parent usually steps in, trying to slice perfectly equal pieces. But let's be real, it always fails. One kid cries because the other got slightly more frosting, or the piece with more chocolate. No matter how perfectly equal the size actually is, the perceived value is different, and you just end up looking like a totally biased referee. It's a trap. So the crucial takeaway here is stop cutting the cake yourself. We are going to use something called envy-free division. You step out completely. One kid divides the cake, and the other kid gets to choose their piece first. It's brilliant, because suddenly, greed instantly turns into caution. If the kid cutting the cake makes one slice even slightly better, they know for a fact their sibling is going to snatch it up immediately. They are forced to be flawlessly fair. Actually, this exact strategy was famously used during the British occupation of Egypt for archaeological digs. The expedition would split the newly found artifacts into 2 separate piles, and the Egyptian representative got to choose first. It forces fairness mathematically. How cool is that?
Moving on to Level 2. Indivisible goods. The PlayStation and front seat dispute.
But what happens when you literally can't split the item? Kids will often fight over the front seat of the car just to spite their sibling, not because they actually even care about the seat. To fix this, we apply an effort-based victory auction. This is based on real work by Nobel Prize winners Paul Milgram and Robert Wilson. Instead of money, you have the kids bid chores. Like, how many days of washing dishes is that front seat really worth to you? The absolute genius part of this is the secret bid. They write down their chore offer simultaneously and then reveal it. Highest bid wins. Because they can't see the other person's bid, they can't artificially drive up the price just to be annoying. They have to bid exactly what it's worth to them, which perfectly avoids the winner's curse of accidentally bidding 10 whole days of chores for a mundane 15-minute car ride.
Level 3. The game of chicken. Mastering credible threats.
Have you ever threatened to cancel a whole family vacation from the front seat because the kids were acting up in the back? Kids use what's called reverse reasoning. They know you already booked the hotel and drove 5 hours. You aren't actually turning the car around. Your threat is totally empty. Game theory suggests using the advanced commitment strategy. Think of the historical myth of Tariq ibn Ziyad burning his own ships upon reaching the shore, so his army had literally no retreat. You have to make the consequence mechanical and completely out of your hands. Don't say, "Stop fighting or no PlayStation." Instead say, "I promised your brother that if your homework isn't done by 7 p.m., the PlayStation is his for the night." You've transferred the authority. The consequence is now unstoppable.
Level 4 Information Asymmetry. The Study Dilemma.
Your kid locks their bedroom door to study, but are they actually learning or just endlessly scrolling Instagram? In economics, this is known as the principal-agent problem. You, the principal, want deep understanding. They, the agent, want to finish with absolute zero effort. If you try to pay them or reward them per chapter read, you create a moral hazard. You're incentivizing speed, not quality. It's exactly like this old story of a factory where workers were paid per piece produced. To speed up the machines, the workers literally glued down the safety brake. I mean, sure, they produced more, but quality and safety just plummeted.
So this raises a really fundamental question. How do you prove they actually studied when they hold all the hidden information?
Well, the answer actually comes straight from biology. The peacock tail is what we call a costly signal. That giant, incredibly colorful tail is a massive handicap. It attracts predators, it slows the bird down, but it proves to potential mates that the bird is incredibly strong to survive despite it. You need a costly signal for studying. Don't just ask to see the finished math worksheet. They can copy that from an answer key or just use ChatGPT. Ask them exactly how they arrived at the answer. Had them explain the rule to you. You have to make faking it actually harder and more exhausting than just doing the real work.
And you pair that with the storm petrel strategy. Storm petrel birds will literally ignore their screaming chicks and feed them on a steady schedule, completely refusing to reward the loudest noise. You have to separate the reward from the behavior. Tell your kid, phone time starts at 7 p.m. Period. It doesn't matter if they finish studying at 4 p.m. or 6:03 p.m. The phone unlocks at 7. Suddenly, that huge incentive to rush, to lie, or to glue down the safety brake just vanishes.
All right, here we are. The boss battle, repeated games, and the messy room. You tell two kids, clean this shared room and you both get ice cream. You come back 20 minutes later and literally nothing is done. Why? Well, it's the classic prisoner's dilemma. If kid A cleans and kid B just sits there, kid A is the idiot doing all the work, but they both still get ice cream. The mathematically safest bet for both kids, to avoid the risk of being the sucker, is to do absolutely nothing. In economics, this total deadlock is called a Nash equilibrium. So how on earth do we break it? Back in 1980, political scientist Robert Axelrod ran a famous computer tournament to solve the prisoner's dilemma. The winning algorithm was incredibly simple, and it was actually inspired by the live and let live ceasefires in the trenches of World War I. It was called tit for tat. You start with cooperation. If betrayed, you retaliate immediately. But if they cooperate again, you forgive them instantly. Over the long term, this simple, logical reciprocity completely destroyed all the aggressive, selfish strategies. To use tit for tat on the messy room, you must turn it into a repeated game. Don't say clean the whole room. Say, take turns picking up one toy. It's a microtask. Kid A picks up a block. Okay, now it's Kid B's turn. If Kid B refuses, progress stops entirely, and there is no ice cream. You have instantly exposed exactly who is ruining the deal. And what if they both just stall? You jump in as a third player, pick up a block yourself, and pass the turn, which forces a race to cooperate. Conclusion: the real-world payoff. It turns out, research shows that infants as young as 15 months old will stare longer in surprise at unfair reward distributions. Kids are quite literally wired for fairness from birth. Using game theory on them isn't about manipulation, it's about honoring their inherent logic. So ask yourself this: when you use these structured, logical negotiations, are you just managing a messy room, or are you teaching them how to survive an unfair world with kindness? You're teaching them that cooperation isn't just some nice moral idea, but actually the most logical winning strategy for a balanced life. They learn to be kind in a world that isn't always kind. And hey, speaking of a fair exchange of value, to that one extremely dedicated commenter who keeps relentlessly asking for an explainer on Dostoevsky, I see your costly signal. Let's make a deal. If this explainer gets enough traction, maybe we'll finally drop Dostoevsky in the Bermuda Triangle. Thank you so much for joining me on The Explainer today, and keep learning.